Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all my first ever official video game review right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, as always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's videos, and this is my first ever official video game review. Now, before I jump into this video, many of you are wondering, Larry, why have you never done video game reviews before? Well, consider this. I don't purchase video games often. More often than not, I only purchase video games that I am already anticipating getting. Like, I have to know ahead of time, and it's usually months in advance where it's like, oh yeah, alright, cool, I'm gonna get that video game, or yeah, I gotta get it, I can't wait till it comes out. But then, once I actually buy the video game, I like to take my time and play through it at my own pace. A lot of reviewers, especially like video game reviewers, film reviewers, music reviewers, even book reviewers, they will, run through the product so that they can produce the review in a reasonable amount of time. I actually like to enjoy my video games, to play them at my own pace, and more often than not, this has actually happened in the past. There have been several times where I've wanted to do a video game review, but by the time I get around to actually completing the game, it's months after the game's release, and by then, I mean, there's just not much point. This is actually a rare example because the video game that I'm reviewing in this review is Pokemon Black. Now, Pokemon Black has been out for well over a year. However, the highly anticipated sequel is coming out at the end of this year. And so I figured now is as good a time as any to actually review this first, because I will be getting Pokemon Black 2, and hopefully I will actually be able to play that and then review that in a reasonable amount of time. Like I said, I won't rush through it by any stretch of the imagination, but hopefully I'll complete it in a reasonable amount of time to produce a review. I mean, hell, I beat this sucker in 2 weeks, but that's because I was hungry for Pokemon. Like, I hadn't, this has been the first game I've played since Platinum. But I never got past the first town in Platinum just because I couldn't. I really did not like Platinum. I really did not like it. I really did not enjoy it. So I dropped it before I got to my first gym battle. And before that, last Pokemon games I played were the second gen. Silver, Gold, and Crystal. So it's been a long time since I dwelled into the Pokemon world, and so I was really anxious and hungry. I was like, gotta get some Pokemons in my system, and so after I got my 3DS, it seems like good as time as any to go ahead and pick up Black. But now, since we're talking about the game, let's go ahead and let's jump into my review. Now, I have not yet properly planned out an outline for my video game reviews yet. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to improv with my movie review outline, which tackles pretty much some of the same areas. We're talking about story, we're talking about writing, we're talking about like game design, graphics, gameplay, those type of things. So until I'll use that for this review, just to kind of frame where my review is coming from. So first and foremost, let's start off with a brief summary for those of you all who don't know what Pokemon is about or who have never played a Pokemon game. Just give you all a quick crash course in what Pokemon is about. Pokemon are, for lack of a better term, they are pretty much the animals, the creatures who co-inhabit the world along with the human characters. And Pokemon come in different species, different shapes, sizes, colors, and they all have special abilities. They have special types. You have anywhere from water, fire, grass, poison, ghost, dark, light, steel, rock, fighting, psychic, all different types. I mean, there's actually 17 different types of Pokemon. And the games are pretty straightforward in that your character is a rookie trainer who is just starting out on his or her Pokemon journey. And throughout the course of the game, you acquire new Pokemon. You train them and raise them to be competitive, because that's another cornerstone of the Pokemon franchise, is that trainers are people who catch Pokemon and then raise them and train them to be competitive Pokemon. Now many have criticized the Pokemon franchise for giving the wrong impression. Many have drawn parallels to things such as like dogfighting or cockfighting, where, because in the real world, you have people who will take these animals and train them to fight and kill other animals. And that's not what Pokemon is. Pokemon is not, it's not done in the same vein as like dogfighting or cockfighting. What I like to think of Pokemon is more along the lines of fighters, like boxers and MMAs, or even Olympic athletes, where you are the trainer, you're the coach, and your Pokemon are your athletes. Those are your students, and you coach them to bring out the most in their potential. And of course, the big thing is like, well, they're not humans, they're animals, and this is that and the other. I don't look at it in that light. I don't look at it in that vein. When I'm training my Pokemon, I think of myself as, Mick from the Rocky series. You're gonna eat lightning and crack thunder. We need speed. So I mean, that's how I view it. I see the reasonable comparisons from like dogfighting and cockfighting, but I don't view it as that, because in essence, Pokemon is not about violence. It's not about killing your opponent. It's about you and your opponent going head to head to see who's the best fighter. And because when you defeat a Pokemon, they don't die, they faint. Just like in a boxing match, when you knock someone out, they faint, but they don't die most of the time. Anywho, so I know I kind of went off in a tangent, but to finish up my brief summary, so that's pretty much what Pokemon's about. You start off as a rookie trainer. You go on this journey to, number one, catch Pokemon. Number two, raise them, train them, and number three, by battling other Pokemon trainers, by challenging and battling and defeating the gym leaders of the region, you become a successful and powerful trainer. You become one of the best trainers in the region, and if you successfully beat the game and you defeat the Elite Four, who are the champions of the region, you become the best there is in the world. That's pretty much what the Pokemon games are in a nutshell. Now let's talk about the story, because more often than not, in the past, all the previous generations of Pokemon games have followed the formula which I just told you about. They follow the same cookie-cutter formula, and this one does also. However, the thing that makes the 5th gen different, and this is the thing that the 5th gym has actually been acclaimed for, is that this is the first time where they have actually introduced a more developed and a more in-depth story. This game does follow the same formula, but it also introduces an element of storytelling that has not been done in the previous generations. And this is what the story is. Now, every generation has their evil organization, who are the bad guys of the games. This generation's evil organization is Team Plasma. However, Team Plasma's, at first, their plan is not as cut and dry as the previous generation's villains. Team Plasma, what they want to do is they want to liberate Pokemon. They want to segregate Pokemon from humans. They acknowledge the fact that Pokemon are creatures within their own right, that they are actually intelligent, that they do have feelings and emotions of their own, and that the correct course of action to return everything back to its natural order is to return the Pokemon back to their natural habitats so that they can live naturally the way they did before Pokemon battling and Pokemon training became a sport. You know, to use another to draw another real world parallel, it's pretty much like what PETA, I think that's the organization, PETA, the ones who are against, you know, who are against killing animals for fur and who are against eating animals and stuff like that. It's pretty much them, but blown up in a much more, it's pretty much blown up in kind of much more of a more caricature way. I'm not saying that Team Plasma is making fun of PETA in no stretch of the imagination. No, not at all. What I'm saying is they're a more colorful example of like what an organization like that would exist in a world like this. And so that's their main just of that's their deal. Now, where do you come in? Where does your character come into play with this? Well, your character, who of course you get to name however you want. Mine was named L, of course. Your character is accompanied by his two best friends, Bianca and Charon, and you three all agree to go out on your Pokemon journey together. And of course, that's when you follow the formula. You catch a Pokemon, you train them, you go to the different gym, you go to the different cities, you travel the region, you challenge the gym leaders, you get the badges, you go to the Elite Four, you defeat them, you become the champion. That is still the same. However, with Team Plasma's involvement in the game, you actually come across them multiple times, and you actually get caught up in the conflict of the story, which is Team Plasma's somewhat of their soft approach at the beginning turning into a more radical, forceful approach to get people in order to fall in line with their beliefs and with their motives and their objectives. You get caught in the middle of that, and in the end you actually become the hero because you are the main trainer chosen. You are actually chosen by the main villain in the game to oppose Team Plasma, which was one part of the story I really liked. The idea that you weren't, it wasn't so much that you got swept up in the circumstances, but it's to the point where you got involved so much so that the villain was like, you know what? You keep opposing us at every front, so I want you to come at me with everything you got. Come at me, bro. You know, the villain actually issues out the challenge to you. And it's up to you to accept that challenge and to kind of take over the mantle, of, you know, being the force of good against this corporation. Now, my thoughts on the story. I actually applaud Nintendo and Game Freak and Team Pokemon for what they were attempting to do with this story. Like I said, the story's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, one of my biggest complaints with the story was that throughout the game, Team Plasma's motives did not make sense. What they claimed to believe and then what their actions actually were contradictory. They were an organization of hypocrites because they say one thing but do the exact opposite. That was my major problem with the story, because throughout the entire game you keep running into them and it doesn't make any sense, and it's not until the end of the story when you realize what their true motives were that it actually does make sense. When you learn what Team Plasma's true motives were in the game, it does make sense. And their whole hypocrisy bit actually does fall in line, because then you're like, well, yeah, that makes more sense. And by the time you get to the end of the game, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But what I do award the game with is this. Number one, the villain is much more complex than in previous games. You know, compared to like Giovanni from the first generation, he's much more complex. Not by a huge amount, but he has more depth to him than previous villains. Number two, I really Okay, I'll save the themes for after this point. Number 2, the subplots. This game has subplots, character-driven subplots, which I did not expect, and I immensely enjoyed. The subplots took me by complete surprise, and I loved them. And not only that, but they are relatively very relatable subplots. Especially the subplot with Bianca. That was my favorite one. I loved the hell out of it because I thought it was very down to earth. It was very realistic, even within a game of this magnitude. But for the audience in which this game is intended for, which is small children, that subplot is actually pretty prevalent. That subplot is something that will resonate with that age group. So I really did love it. Sharon's subplot I thought was a bit too cliche because it had been used so often before. But within the context of the game, I thought it made sense because his subplot was what established his entire character arc, which was another thing. These characters have arcs. These characters have arcs. I did not expect that because it had never been done before. And I applaud them for doing that. Now, my last little bit about the story will be the themes. And hear me out. I will give Nintendo, Game Freak, and Team Pokemon props for their attempt at some of these themes, because some of these themes for a young age demographic is pretty damn good. I mean, like, I don't know if most kids will pick up on these, but me being an adult playing this, these themes resonated with me. And the major theme that occurs in this game is the theme of ideal. It's a conflict between ideal and truth. What we're talking about what we're talking about in a much more elaborate scope is idealisticness versus realism, and how people's ideals influence their actions, how people's view of the world, that realistic view, influence their actions, and where the two meet, and what's the main conflict there. Like this, you know, that is a very powerful theme for a children's game, a very powerful theme. And like I said, you can't just like. Very often I am annoyed by the claim that just because it is a children's product means it has to be watered down and dumbed down and it cannot be intelligent. This was my main gripe about the Legend of Korra finale, that people kept making that argument, well, remember, it's a children's show. And that, I'm sorry, that's one of the dumbest fucking arguments I've ever heard in my life. Why? Because we've had multiple children's series that have very mature and very elaborate and very intelligent themes. Just off the top of my head, Batman the Animated Series, X-Men the Animated Series, X-Men Evolution, Spider-Man the Animated Series, Spectacular Spider-Man, Hey Arnold, Rugrats, the original Avatar: The Last Airbender, Thundercats has a couple of episodes like that. So yeah, that's 9 examples. If I want to throw in Pokemon Black, that's 10 examples I just gave you of material that is intended for children audiences, that has themes that are very intelligent and are very broad. I really need people to stop saying that just because it's for children means that it does not need to be intelligent. That's a bullshit argument. That argument holds no fucking weight whatsoever. None whatsoever. Bullshit argument. And I'm very glad that this game introduced those themes. Another thing was another really prevalent theme that I absolutely loved about this game was the importance of the relationship between people and Pokemon, and also the importance of the idea that when just like your character, for children who play this game, just like their character is traveling this region, and they're going to all these different cities, and they're meeting all these different people, and everybody has a different ideal, everybody has a different mindset, everyone thinks differently, everyone has their own opinions, everyone has their own beliefs. What this game reinforces with its themes is the theme of accepting people and respecting their differences. Someone disagrees with you, someone believes something different, someone operates differently than you, but you can still respect that person for that, and you can accept them for who they are despite your differences. That is in this fucking game. That is excruciatingly important for children to learn, because that's how the real world is. I am so fucking happy that that is in this game, and I absolutely love Game Freak, Team Pokemon, Nintendo for putting that in this game. That's very important. To see that blew me away completely. Now, I know I've gone ad nauseum about the story and the themes, so in a way to these will be my closing remarks. I'm going to talk about number one, the graphics, number two, the gameplay, and then my final thoughts. Okay, number one, the graphics, which will also go into the character designs and the designs for some of the Pokemon. Now, number one, this game is beautiful. This game is absolutely beautiful. Vibrant colors. The designs for this game, there are actually full-scale cities in this game. Fuck, unbelievable. They even used real-world locations as influences for some of the cities, like New York City, San Francisco were used for some of the sites in this game, and you can see it as soon as you see it. But the fact that they went to such depth with the world building, with the region building in this game, spectacular, unbelievable. The character designs are very good also. I mean, the main cast of characters, they all look different. They all have various color palettes in their designs, and even in regards to the writing, they each have a different voice. You know who is who by the manner in which they speak, which is also really good, really good. Now I want to talk about the Pokemon designs, because I personally feel like as the generations have continued, the Pokemon designs have suffered. There are multiple Pokemon in this game and in the 5th generation that their designs are very simple. Hell, even their names are very simple and not very creative. Multiple ones. There are some that are very good. There are some that are very bad. And the majority of them, I feel, are mediocre. I think that's my 25-minute marker. But yeah, I will say this. For the most part, as in regards to the design of the Pokemon for the 5th gen, most of them are mediocre. Most. There's only a handful of them that are actually exceptional, and likewise only a handful of them that are actually completely horrible. Most of them are mediocre though. And so let's talk about the gameplay. The gameplay is much the same as in previous generations. There are a few extra things that they incorporate, and there are a few new battle modes. I mean, I think the last generation were the ones who introduced the team battles. But this one introduces the rotational battle. I'm not sure if this one was the one who introduced the triple battle, if the triple battle was introduced in the previous gen. I know the previous gen introduced the double battle, so I'm not sure if they introduced the triple too. This gen introduces the rotational battle, which I don't fucking like. I don't like the rotational battle, me personally. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying I don't care for it. Another thing in regards to the gameplay, but also in regards to the Pokemon design, is the evolution of the multi-type Pokemon. You know, in the 1st gen and even in the 2nd gen, you got a lot of Pokemon that were one type. The vast majority of Pokemon in the first 2 gens were one type. By now, though, damn near every Pokemon in the 5th gen is double type. Which can be annoying, especially when you get contradictory types. What I mean is this: like, you have Pokemon that are rock and water types, or flying and electric types, or water and electric types. That shit is annoying. That shit is annoying because it makes it very difficult to beat those Pokemon because their types contradict each other. You don't have an advantage anymore. You don't have a type advantage. And so my overall thoughts to wrap up this review. I think this is a very good game. Especially, okay, first off, I think it's an excellent Pokemon game, but as a video game in itself, I think it's really good. It's very enjoyable. It's very enjoyable. The story gets you involved. Never have I played a Pokemon game for the story as much as I did this one. I played this more often because I wanted to find out what was going to happen next, and I really loved it. I just really did enjoy this. Like I said, my only cons about this is the Pokemon character designs and some inconsistencies with the story, but as a whole, very strong game. Highly recommend it for anybody, especially if you're a Pokemon fan. You must own. Highly recommend it, especially for parents who buy video games for their kids. Definitely, this is a damn good game for kids, and I am highly looking forward to the sequel. So that's going to do it for my review of Pokemon Black. I want to thank you all for joining me, and stay tuned because tomorrow is going to be my anime favorites for July 2012, which will be Cowboy Bebop. But with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off, and until next time, peace.